Over the last few years, Naz Reid has become a very important piece to the Timberwolves and an absolute fan favorite. He just won the Sixth Man of the Year award and had multiple big moments throughout their playoff run. He was playing so well that a tattoo studio in Minnesota was giving out Naz Reid tattoos for just $20. And yes, multiple people took them up on it. Even during this season, the Timberwolves themselves had an appreciation night where they gave every single person in attendance a Naz Reid beach towel. Seeing an entire arena waving towels of a player that isn't even in the starting lineup is just special. And I'm not even kidding, these towels were seen all over the place. Fans were bringing them to baseball games, wrestling events, and really wherever they could. The love that the fans have for Naz Reid is actually unreal, and this guy on Reddit quickly summed up why that is. So how did a guy who just won the Sixth Man of the Year award and who's loved by an entire fan base go undrafted? Well, to answer that question, we have to go all the way back to his high school days. And Naz Reid was a big name in high school. That's because he was one of the best players in the class of 2018, and he was a part of a very popular group called Jelly Fam. If you were around the high school basketball scene anytime from 2016 to 2018, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Jelly Fam was basically this group of pretty high-level high school players who, instead of doing flashy dunks, decided to do flashy layups. The layups were not only impressive, but it almost acted as a compliment to the player's game. This took the world by storm and had everybody in the basketball community doing them. But because Naz Reid was a part of this group, his name was out there even more than it already was. It's also where he got the nickname Big Jelly. Most of the Jelly Fam players were guards, and he was one of the only players that wasn't. So by the time he was a senior, he was a 5-star recruit and the 12th ranked player in his class according to ESPN. He was committed to LSU, where he went on to have a solid season. He didn't play as well as people thought he would, but honestly, that's the reality for a lot of top players in every class. Naz averaged 13.6 points and 7.2 rebounds a game. He also shot 47% from the field and 33% from 3. He could play as a traditional big man, but also had the ability to put the ball on the floor and shoot threes. Naz was a 3-level scorer even in college. He didn't nearly have the bag he does now, but the blueprint was definitely there. On offense, he clearly had a lot of potential. It was on the defensive end where a lot of his flaws were exposed. Naz was a big dude even in high school and college. He played around 250 pounds at 6'9". But defensively, he didn't play like it. He didn't really use his body to his advantage when it came to rebounding or contesting a shot in the paint. He got better towards the end of the season, but there were times where it looked like he wasn't even trying. It took him 12 games to have a 10-rebound game, and for the first 11, he was averaging less than 5. That isn't terrible, but it's just not what a lot of people were expecting from him. He finished the season actually playing pretty well, despite not having the best performances during their tournament run. I also have to mention the team had one of their best seasons in program history, like even to this day. LSU finished with a 28-7 record and lost in the regional semifinal during March Madness. Even though Naz Reid didn't have the best season he could have had, the team still had a lot of success. Throughout the year, his draft stock was going up and down, but by the end of the whole thing, he still was expected to get drafted at some point. The thing that put the nail in the coffin, though, was his combine performance. The whole point of the combine is to improve your stock and show teams you're someone worth investing in. Well, Naz Reid did the exact opposite. Out of everyone that participated in the combine, Naz was the 3rd heaviest player, and one of those guys was 7'6" Taco Fall, who's got an excuse for weighing what he was. But on top of that, he had the highest body fat percentage as well at 14%, which was over 4% higher than the next highest player. It's not the end of the world, but it shows scouts what kind of shape he was in when he showed up. But it doesn't even end there, and literally every one of the agility drills that they did, Naz Reid had some of the worst numbers. Naz was never considered extremely athletic, but I don't think many people thought his numbers were going to be as bad as they were. He had the worst shuttle run out of everybody by over 0.2 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot at all, but in the shuttle run, it is. It was so bad that even Taco Fall was 0.3 seconds faster. It was so bad that since they started tracking it in 2014, Naz has had the worst time out of every single player that has attempted it. But with his agility numbers being so low, you would assume his bench press number would be a lot higher. I mean, mass moves mass. But Naz was able to bench 185 pounds just 3 times, which again was one of the lowest in his whole combine. His just all-around bad numbers, on top of a season where he slightly underperformed, his draft stock got even worse. And now you should be starting to see why he went undrafted. Teams were worried about his conditioning and his all-around effort. Combine that with his lack of defense and slight tunnel vision on offense, I really don't blame teams for not wanting to invest in him. You could see that he had potential when he played, but it was going to take a lot of time and a lot of work to get him to that point. And based on his weight and sometimes lazy play on the court, teams weren't sure if that transition was even going to be possible. At the end of the day though, there was still potential. Which is why after the draft, the Timberwolves went from signing him to a 2-way deal to signing him to a multiple-year contract just a few weeks later. They were willing to be patient with him to create the best player they possibly could out of him, which is what we're seeing right now. But all this leads us into yet another question. How in the world did a dude that was completely out of shape coming into the league turn into one of the most valuable bench players? Well, since his first season, Naz Reid has improved so much that he's almost an entirely different player. It shows you just how much work he's been putting in behind the scenes. In the first couple seasons, there were flashes of what he could become, but lately he's starting to actually reach that potential. You can't really look at him like a backup big man. Really, he's a modern day 6-man just in a bigger body. He could be a starter for a lot of other teams in the NBA, but he's been the Timberwolves' perfect spark plug off the bench. He consistently puts up good numbers on both ends of the floor, and he really showed it to everyone in the world during their playoff run. If he would have made that final 3 in Game 2, then who knows what that series could have turned into. He literally made 7 threes in that game. If he could have hit that shot, then he would have immediately been put in the Timberwolves Hall of Fame. He still came up big in multiple games throughout every series they played and was one of the most important players. Naz finished the playoffs averaging 11 points and 4 rebounds, but he was the only one on the team putting up those numbers off the bench. It wasn't necessarily about how many points he scored, it was more about when he scored those points. It felt like he was always there to get some kind of bucket out of nowhere when his team needed it the most. The speed of his release is actually insane for a big, and even though his shot isn't the prettiest, it sure does go in. Then his ability to attack the rim has been there since college and even high school. The overall package that he's created over the years just makes him a great all-around player and a lot more than just a backup big. Last season, the team signed him to a 3-year, $42 million contract, which is honestly a steal. And the best part about him that I haven't mentioned yet is that Naz Reid is only 24 years old. There's still plenty of time for him to get even better than he already has. So if he continues on this path, then who knows where he might be when it comes to his next contract. It's the main reason Timberwolves fans love him so much. They got to watch him become this player right in front of their own eyes. And hopefully for him, this is just the beginning. But let me know down in the comments what you think about Naz Reid, and please leave a like on the video to support the channel. Also subscribe if you're new for more basketball videos just like this one.